When I first started out my career, actually a CFO told me inventory is cash sitting on the shelf. So
that's a really good one.
So every time I look at something sitting on the shelf, I think, okay, that's a $1 bill or that's $1,000 bills or however many it is. So that's a way that I guess I've always thought about it. But the key is how do you manage that level of inventory such that you've got adequate supply such that you can fulfill demand over the short term? How do you think about it longer term? Because you may have supplier contracts that have to run a year in advance because they're buying things with lead times and everything else.
Right.
So it's all about just, we'll call it smart management and being really, really, really communicative between sales, operations, purchasing, finance, order management. We all have to be in sync.
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to a special edition of the podcast. What you're about to hear is an interview I did with Dustin Pederson, CFO of Locus Robotics from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. That's right, we were invited down to Wall Street to shoot a series of podcasts with CFOs from pre-IPO companies. This was a bucket list interview and setting, and it did not disappoint. Dustin and I go deep on business models that rely on supply chains. We discuss how their robot as a service model works and how it makes money. Dustin talks about the unique challenges of managing inventory and gives tactical tips for CFOs looking to optimize their cash conversion cycles. Get that CCC! We then hit on the metrics companies who have both hardware and software components track and the similarities and differences between pure SaaS models. Perhaps the most fascinating part of the combo relates to ROI. How to build an ROI model and then explain it succinctly to buyers on the other side of the table. As someone who's attempted to build countless ROI models for sales teams to use, this one was chock full of helpful tactics. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. Okay, serious question for all my accounting pros here today. Are you doing what you were hired to do? What I mean is, do you have time to actually be a business partner, or are you buried in tedious manual tasks just to get your journal entries prepared every month? I know how that feels. Leapfin's here to help with that. Leapfin is accounting automation software that automatically prepares and posts reliable journal entries. And that's just the beginning. High-growth businesses like Reddit, Canva, and SeatGeek choose Leapfin to eliminate manual tasks, accelerate month-end close, and enable accounting leaders like you to provide faster insights that will help your company grow. If you're battling messy transaction data from Stripe, Adyen, Shopify, Apple Pay, and other PSPs, and then battling again to get it all into Netsuite, go to leapfin.com to watch their short product intro video. And if you like what you see, request a 15-minute conversation to learn how accounting automation can help you and your team. Check out leapfin.com today. That's leap like jump, fin like shark. I just made that up. I hope they're okay with it. Leapfin.com. Mercury knows your financial operations are complex. Founders and finance teams have to pull together different tools, reconcile transactions from different sources, and struggle to get accurate answers. With Mercury, you can simplify your operations with banking and software that power your critical financial workflows, all within the one thing every business needs, a bank account. And with new bill pay and accounting capabilities, you can pay bills faster, stay in control of company spend, and speed up reconciliation. Apply in minutes at Mercury.com and join over 200,000, ambitious startups that trust Mercury to provide the precision, control, and focus they need to transform their financial workflows so they can perform at their best. Mercury, the art of simplified finances. Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Choice Financial Group and Evolve Bank and Trust. Members FDIC. I'm getting good at that voice. Dustin, welcome to the Run the Numbers podcast, and more importantly, welcome to the New York Stock Exchange.
Thanks for having me, CJ. It's an honor.
I usually do these podcasts in shorts and sandals, so I had to get dressed up for you today.
Well, you look good.
Thanks. I was really excited to talk to you because most of the CFOs I speak to, they deal in just pure software. Your business, Locus Robotics, has a physical component to it as well. So I wanted to just ask you off the top, how does your robot as a service model work?
Yes, Locus Robotics, our business is all about providing automation for warehouses. So we provide an autonomous mobile robot that works with a software solution that helps automate warehouses to make them more efficient in terms of logistics warehouses primarily. So both inbound and outbound. So the way our business model works is our customers, rather than buying CapEx, a piece of CapEx, so a big piece of infrastructure, what they do is they subscribe to the solution, they receive the robots as well as the software back end, so dashboards and data to make their operations more efficient as well, through an as-a-service model. So we'll do the installation. It's a very lightweight installation. We'll put in Wi-Fi, a couple servers, ship the robots, integrate with the ERP, or it's what's called the warehouse management system, and you're off and running within the matter of a few months with robots, without ever shutting the warehouse down or changing any infrastructure in the facility.
That's awesome. I may be butchering it, but it kind of reminds me of the model that I think a lot of the jet engines have, where you kind of rent the engine and you pay for the maintenance on top of it. But I love business models like this because it innovates on a traditional way where it would have been super CapEx heavy to buy a bunch of robots. Yes,
exactly. And at the end of the day, customers don't want to support infrastructure. They don't want to have specialists that are in charge of robots.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, customers just want automation. They want it to work, and they want it to be very efficient and effective.
So you're saying robot manager isn't the job I can apply for?
You could try.
So how does it make money then? You said it's a subscription model primarily. Is it usage-based, pure subscription?
Yep, so it's pure subscription. We price off of the number of robots. So there's a price per robot. So a customer will subscribe to, on average, it could be tens. It's going to be tens of robots at a minimum. And with that, the solution will work. And so customers pay annually in advance. They sign up for typically 2 or 3 year agreements, and they get they have the solution. And at renewal, they can choose whether they want to add more robots. You can add more robots anytime, or you can, if your volumes are down, you can reduce the number of robots. So what our solution does is it provides a level of automation capacity that aligns with demand in a warehouse. So if you have uncertainty around the future demand, volume demand, if you're a 3PL, for example, so a third-party logistics provider like DHL, for example, and you have an end contract with your end customer that may be X number of years, and you may have uncertainty after that, you want to make sure you've got that flexible automation that can help automate while that client is a client. And if they renew, great, you can continue on with Locus. If you don't, well, you can ship the robots back.
Well, it reminds me of all these stories you hear about seasonal workers in Amazon warehouses around the holiday season. So I guess robots are a way to kind of factor in that flex capacity to your operating model.
Yes, exactly. We also allow clients during holiday season for e-commerce or for retailer clients predominantly to scale up the number of robots they have. So they'll sign a separate order form for X number of robots.
Yeah.
For additional robots, we will ship the robots to the site, and they can deploy them by effectively turning them on. They'll download the map, they'll connect with the other robots, and they'll join the fleet very seamlessly.
That's awesome. And so I don't get to ask this question very often, but what are some of the unique challenges of dealing with the supply chain as a CFO?
Yeah, so my background is predominantly enterprise software, but I spent about a decade at Honeywell International in a number of businesses that did have hardware. So
they make stuff.
They make stuff, exactly. But I think that some of the challenges are just there is a hardware component. So there's supply chain. Supply chain has its own complexity in terms of management and ensuring that cash is being utilized for the most useful and efficient thing at any given point in time. So, for example, if you have a supply chain, you need to coordinate up and down the stack. So we have contract manufacturers that build most of the robot. So when our demand ebbs and flows, we have to coordinate with them to ensure that they're building to a schedule that can also be flexible. So it's really managing the relationship with the contract manufacturers. It's ensuring that we're getting good pricing on components. It's ensuring that we have good payment terms on the components, and it's ensuring that our entire team, from sales to operations to purchasing and finance are all coordinated such that we're projecting demand adequately. We know our inventory supply, and we know what's coming, and we work the system as best we can.
So maybe you could say a bit more about working capital. How do you think about working capital in your day-to-day?
Yeah, so obviously it's very important. We are a startup. We do burn capital today, but we think about it from the standpoint of like any other company, where it's something that we try to be very thoughtful about. Keeping our inventory level at an ideal level. And when we were smaller, we had to keep more of a larger percentage as a buffer, effectively.
Right.
Because you wanted to make sure, what we wanted to guard against is upside risk, where a customer put in a big order and we couldn't fulfill it, because that'd be a bad thing. With software companies, you can turn on the seats or turn on the licenses a little bit more instantaneous, typically. But for us, we actually had to have physical robots. So it's managing the right level of inventory and ensuring that we're being smart up and down the supply chain.
You hear these horror stories about companies who actually crumble because growth was almost too much. It's like they grow too fast and the working capital constraints, like, it could be a company, it's like a vitamin company that has to, pre-buy the ingredients or something like that. If you get a surge in demand, you can actually grow yourself into the ground.
Yes, exactly. And we faced some of that, honestly, during 2020, 2021. There was a lot of demand for warehouse automation. There's still a lot of demand today, but at that point in time, we were much smaller. So just the whiplash, and then at the same time, during that time period, was also managing our suppliers, who certain suppliers had COVID-related shutdowns, and what happens if you can't get batteries, and just a whole lot of complexity in terms of all the work. I will say our purchasing team did a very good job throughout it all, and managing all the relationships and really keeping in tune with what was the critical components at any given point in time.
I've worked with procurement people in the SaaS world, and somebody once said to me that like procurement and purchasing is a relationship business, and I never thought about it that way. I thought they were just buying stuff, but I like how you pointed that out, that they maintain their relationship.
It's got to be relationship driven. If you have to speak with a supplier, because sometimes suppliers also have challenges, so you also want to be. We have to be friendly on our side. If they can't deliver, we expect to deliver of X number of widgets next week, and they can't deliver because they had some sort of issue. They had an issue getting a component or some sort of issue. It's just maintaining that communication so that everybody up and down the stack can be very transparent and thoughtful. And those are the best relationships, because when you're in need, they tend to help out, and when they're in need, we tend to be thoughtful and helpful.
Yeah, as well. Long-term game, definitely. Yep. I'm ashamed to admit this, but I wouldn't know what to do with inventory if it hit me in the face. Any top tips just for younger CFOs who are trying to manage inventory for the first time?
Yeah, when I first started out my career, actually a CFO told me inventory is cash sitting on the shelf. So
that's a really good one.
So every time I look at something sitting on the shelf, I think, okay, that's a dollar bill, or that's $1,000 bills, or however many it is. So that's a way that I guess I've always thought about it. So how can you? But the key is, how do you manage that level of inventory such that you've got adequate supply, such that you can fulfill demand over the short term? How do you think about it longer term? Because you may have supplier contracts that have to run a year in advance, because they're buying things with lead times and everything else.
Right.
So it's all about just, we'll call it smart management, and being really, really, really communicative between sales, like I said before, sales, operations, purchasing, finance, order management. We all have to be in sync. And what I found is a good practice is, both at Honeywell as at Locus, we have what's called the SNOP, or some people call it an SIOP process, where every week it's like religion, where you get on the call. We got a call at Tuesday at 11 o'clock, actually, where we get on the phone and we go through this big spreadsheet that has everything from the demand side to the inventory in-house to the build plan for the week to what's going out the door, and then we also talk about any issues or challenges or potential risks. So everybody gathers and we have this conversation, and it's really important just in terms of staying in sync, in terms of all the different, we'll call it nuances that can happen.
It's kind of like you have a plan on a page.
Yes, yeah, yep.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you have any unique metrics that maybe the physical component forces you to track, or that you need to keep up with?
Yeah, so we obviously are looking at utilization of our robots. So because we have we have a physical robot, so we have to always understand how many are actually producing revenue at any given point in time. Okay. So we'll have certain bots that are out in the field producing revenue. We'll have certain bots that are back for repair, which are not producing revenue. We'll have certain bots that just came off the production line that are not producing revenue. We'll have certain bots that are waiting at a customer site for deployment because they might show up 2-3 weeks early. So it's looking at all of that to understand of the CapEx that we put into the business, what's the revenue return, and you can look at it on a percentage basis. You can also look at it just in terms of dollar per unit produced in terms of price. But that's one that I think is a little bit unique to our hardware business. We also look at more traditional metrics. We look at how many units our bots have picked across any given day. We look at same store sales year over year. So if there's a warehouse that was doing business with us a year ago and consistent week year over year, you look to understand the utilization of the robots, because that really helps give you an indicator of how performant the bots are being, and likelihood of renewal and that sort of thing.
What a cool thing to track. I would nerd out on those metrics to see how fast the bots are moving and how efficient they are.
Yeah,
and I bet there are some companies that are probably better at managing them than others.
Yes, definitely. And there are. I mean, we have certain clients that are very sophisticated. They're some of the largest companies in the world, and then we've got smaller clients that may only have a couple of warehouses where operations is not their core competency, but they've obviously got to get product out the door, and they choose to do it themselves rather than go through a third-party logistics provider.
Do you still track typical SaaS metrics like net dollar retention rate?
Oh yeah, we look at contracted annual recurring revenue, gross margin, NDR, gross dollar retention. So all the typical SaaS metrics apply, because we are a business that is a subscription business. We just happen to have a piece of hardware that gets the press.
I imagine buying robots is a pretty big investment for a lot of companies. How do you explain the ROI of what you sell to a CFO who's running a massive warehouse?
Yeah, so the way to think about it is in a manual warehouse, it's typically a person pushing a cart, walking 12 to 15 miles a day, and they may do a pick. So may grab something off the shelf once every minute, or maybe once every 45 seconds if they're good. So at $20 an hour or $22 an hour, that's about 30 cents per pick. So just a way to think about the
Love
math.
The unit economics here.
Yeah, get right down to the unit economics. In a Locus-enabled warehouse, we typically double to triple the efficiency of the human. So instead of doing 60 UPH, they may do 120 or 140 or whatever the number is. So assuming a double, that reduces that 30 cents down to 15 cents. You add on solution cost, which is typically 5, 6, 7 cents. We don't charge on a consumption basis, but that's kind of the average, and that saves the customer close to 10 cents. So that's a meaningful portion of the largest line item of OpEx in a fulfillment or distribution warehouse, because this is a solution that's helping with a problem that where most of the labor is in a warehouse.
Did you say that a typical person working in a warehouse walks 12 to 15 miles a day?
Yeah, they're pushing a cart. Think if you order something online. If you order a shirt and pair of shoes from your favorite retailer, that shirt may be in the front corner of the warehouse, and that your pair of shoes might be a quarter mile back.
Wow.
You got to go, it's just like if you were shopping at a retail store, you've got to walk to different parts of the store to bring the order together.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what I'm wearing because we give the brands away, but before we started, Dustin gave me a breakdown. Some of my clothes, I think, have been picked by a robot.
I think there's a high likelihood.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Quick math, the less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. That's the goal, isn't it? But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. Yesterday's price is not today's price. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to Netsuite by Oracle. Netsuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With Netsuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required. Access from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies, wow, that's a lot of customers, have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. And back by popular demand, NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/metrics. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, you know your boy loves some metrics. That's netsuite.com/metrics. Please do it, guys. I really need this. Cash is king. As the CFO of a SaaS company, I know firsthand how important it is to maintain a healthy AR balance. If you can't effectively manage cash, you can't service debt, make payroll, or invest in growing your business. That's why I'm so excited to partner with the sponsor of today's episode, Maxio, the leading billing and financial operations platform for B2B SaaS. Maxio helps top SaaS companies like Chili Piper, Crunchbase, and Stack Overflow get cash in the door faster by automating collections and dunning. Gone are the days of manually chasing down invoices. Join the 2,500 plus subscription businesses using Maxio, formerly SaaS Optics and Chargeify, to eliminate revenue leakage and streamline order to cash. It's never been easier to get paid. Visit maxio.com/run the numbers to supercharge your financial operations in 2024. Not only does requesting a demo using the Run the Numbers link help support this podcast, ya boy, you also receive a 10% discount on your first year with Maxio. Woo! That's maxio.com/run the numbers. That's maxio.com/run the numbers. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report more accurately? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks and with minimal IT involvement, so you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business on your key financial progress. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unparalleled scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Oh yeah! Go to planful.com/metrics to see how you can reach peak financial performance with Planful. That's planful.com/metrics. I've had to build a lot of ROI models for sales reps just in my FP&A career. And the sales reps will take them and they'll be pitching, it could be backup and recovery software, cybersecurity software to another CFO. And I've always felt like I haven't fully bridged the gap between like what we were trying to create and what they were presenting to drive a point home. Do you have any tips? Because I assume you have to build some sort of ROI model.
Yeah, keep it super simple. That's the tip. Salespeople are great. They do a great job. Our salespeople obviously do a great job. But it's with like anything in life, even doing podcasts, it's best just to keep things simple because that resonates and that helps people understand and learn. So one of the methods that we have is looking at what's the customer's payback on their annual and advance subscription payment. Plus, we do have a small installation fee because we do put in Wi-Fi and a couple servers. So maybe 20% or 25% of the first year subscription price goes into this one-time fee. So how long will it take the customer to get payback on that? And our customers typically demand less than a year. And so our sales team is in tune with ensuring that the math pencils from that perspective.
Less than a year. Got it. We were talking to Jeff Cooper, the CFO of Guidewire, and they do basically, ERPs are the control point for insurance companies, so in the vertical software space.
Yep.
And he was saying that there's a large professional services element to it because a CIO is essentially like betting their career on this going right.
Yep.
And if it gets screwed up, like that's not good for their business. So he says, essentially, like the professional services revenue, it's not like for like with, typical SaaS revenue, but it's like it's a requirement for a lot of these companies to, essentially make that jump.
We have one-time revenue, which helps cover the professional services. At the end of the day, Locus is actually very lightweight in terms of implementation. We'd like to have people on site to help with the deployment, but during COVID, we were deploying sites without ever sending a person on site.
Really?
Correct. And we'll do quarterly QBRs.
You had robots install the robots? Yeah, I'm just kidding. You had robots installing the robots?
Exactly. But it's I think Locus has a unique capability to be very easy to use, deploy, buy, and implement. We kind of model ourselves a little bit after Apple from just the ease of use and just making it super easy and intuitive. And that's part of the reason why customers like the solution.
Your FP&A planning team, do they forecast down to like the robot level? Like how do they build these types of models?
Yeah, so we have we've looked at different tools like planning tools. I've used some in the past. We've got a little bit of a unique business because we have hardware and we have a subscription.
Right.
So that's been a little bit of a challenge. So we build our models are primarily built manually through Excel or Google Sheets, and but it's worked. It's worked over the last 4 or 5 years. But if there are any budding entrepreneurs out there that are looking to help provide hardware companies that have a subscription model with a platform, I know there's a few. I've talked to a couple people, but that is a market that is ripe for somebody to come in.
I imagine you're the guy or the friend or the person in the network that people with these unique business models come to a lot for advice. I'm the person who's for some reason the friend that people come to for like 409A advice or something like that, something arcane. What are the typical questions that people out there come to you and ask? Is it around forecasting? Is it around revenue recognition?
Yeah, a number of questions around just managing a physical asset and how how best to put the systems in place to ensure that you can track all the assets in the field. Like from a finance perspective, Dustin, how'd you think about that? And
right.
And I mean, we're similar to think of like a rental car company. I've never worked for one. I don't pretend to be an expert there, but all of the cars that a rental car company has out in the field, you want to know the maintenance history, you want to understand how much mileage they have, you want to understand the rental history, how many dollars of revenue. It's all those type of metrics that we model our business off of so that we can kind of have a similar view. Because at the end of the day, that's helpful for us to better run and operate our business. So our FP&A team, as well as our operations team, we're very thoughtful about that, and I think we've got folks that enjoy that type of work and that type of thought process.
So we're at the New York Stock Exchange. This is kind of like the mecca for finance guys like me and you. And a lot of the things that happen on the floor have to do with stocks trading and their valuation and how you look at kind of the qualities of a company's revenue and whatnot. How do you position yourself against, say, pure play software companies when you're talking to like a banker or investor or anyone valuing your company? Are there nuances to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're essentially a software company. Most of our engineering team is actually software engineers. The hardware is what people see on the website. That's what people see in the warehouses. So that gets a lot of the press. But it's the software, the back end, the business application, the nav stack. We've got teams that are dedicated teams for each of the core components of the solution that are integral for making the solution actually work. So getting back to your question, so in terms of how we position ourselves with the broader market and investor market, is we are akin to a software company in many ways. I mean, we've got a margin profile that's quite similar. We have a recurring revenue model, which people can get their head around, but we do have a piece of hardware. So I think from my perspective, I have to spend a little bit more time and try to make it very simple to understand how the cash dynamics work, given that we have to buy effectively inventory or fixed assets. We call them fixed assets up front, which are the robots. And how does that work? And what's the cash cycle? And when do we get payback? And all the questions that people are curious about. Sophisticated investors are curious about. And the good news is my job's fairly easy because we have a very good model, a very strong model that speaks for itself.
How do you think about the go-to-market motion? Is it different than other software companies? Or do you have field salespeople that are going out?
We are about 80% direct, and we're about 20% via channels. So
there's a channel.
Yeah, we've got partners that resell and sublicense Locus as well. But we do have a field sales team. We have a team of BDRs that helps generate. So very typical to a lot of other technology companies. And I'd say the one difference is we do have probably more clients. Well, basically all of our clients want to see it in person running before they buy, right? So whether it be early days, people would all come to our headquarters to see our demo center and kick the tires on the robot, stand in front of them, do picks to them, and ensure that the solution works. And now we've got enough sites. We've got over 300 sites around the world where there's most warehouses. There's a Locus site running somewhere in the nearby vicinity where they can call up their colleague at a different company down the road and get a tour and see the bots in action.
Yeah.
And it was actually interesting. I was at a couple sites last year, and when I arrived on site, there was actually I was on site just seeing the solution with the site leadership, and there were a group of other people on site, and I asked, who are those people? And they're like, well, that's the company down the street. I invited them over because they wanted to see the robots in action. I'm like, well, that's great. And the next day I went to a different site, and the exact same thing dynamic happened. It was a different retailer had another retailer down the street, site leadership over looking at the robots because they were evaluating the automation. So people want to see it. This is an industry where warehouses have been around for 50, 60, 70, 100 years. They've been around for a very, very long time, and there hasn't been a lot of change in terms of automation. There's conveyor, there's forklifts, there's scanners, there's been some, but this is really a step change into a different type of automation that's been some time coming. So
the warehouses use like a specialized ERP that you have to usually hook into?
Yes, they'll use what's called the WMS, warehouse management system. Some large players are Manhattan Associates, Blue Yonder, Kerber, SAP. So there's a number of folks out there that have these. So when you click online to purchase something, your order will show up in that WMS. Then that'll take the backlog, and that will then be distributed by the Locus solution or whatever picking solution they're using to determine kind of like what the next steps are and who takes that order and that sort of thing.
Coming up as a CFO for a product that serves the auto industry, I love the warehouse models because I also think about the return rates and how that impacts like your P&L. So
yep.
I assume that's probably part of the equation for a lot of your customers.
Yeah, we have a lot of customers that are actually doing inbound as well. So when a truck shows up at the dock, the robots will be there to bring the inventory out to the shelves, right, to be restocked.
Yeah.
And it's kind of intuitive. I'm a big fan of the Toyota production system. This is going back to my lean.
Yeah, say more about that.
Six Sigma days. So like, how do you make things very visual and just super easy for people to understand? And well, our little innovative solution is we've got a tablet on the robot. So if you're an associate in the warehouse, you may walk up to the tablet. If it's got dark mode, that means we're actually doing put away or putting items back on the shelf. So somebody can register real quickly. That robot, I need to take something out of the bin and put it on the shelf. Whereas if it's a white screen in the background, that means I'm picking something and putting it on the robot.
I love that you're highlighting the interaction between humans and technology. That's core to your business.
Yeah, it is, and we've got very intuitive features built into our technology. For example, the associates will wear a low energy Bluetooth tag when they work with Locus. What does that do? Well, that allows the robots, when the robot gets near the person, to flip to the native language, right? So it makes it very easy for somebody who English may not be their preferred or strongest language to interact with the robot. And it's also very intuitive just to be able to walk into a warehouse and become productive very quickly, because everybody's seen a tablet. You can look at the instruction on it and you can scan something and put it in the bin. And it makes it very easy for people to become productive very, very quickly, rather than having to spend weeks and weeks training. Our training takes a couple minutes. Actually, interesting story.
Yeah.
When I first joined Locus, my first interview with our CEO, I walked into the office, and there's a conference room over to the right, and I would just assume we'd walk into that conference room and have a conversation. And our CEO, Rick, he pulled me out into the demo floor, and he said, "I want to see how well you pick." So my first interaction with Locus was actually picking into a robot, and I figured it out in about a minute, which is about 30 seconds too long, more than it should have been. But that's how easy the solution is they get a CFO candidate coming in who can pick to the bot within about a minute and figure out how the solution works. And what it did for me is I said, hey, this thing really works, and
right.
This is actually legit, right? Just so it's kind of an interesting perspective.
What's fascinating about your product in a sense is that you can serve multiple industries, right? Like, yep. I imagine it's not just core retail that you can serve.
Correct. We have customers in the auto industry. We have other industrial customers. We have a lot of healthcare clients, actually. If you think about it, hospitals have to be restocked almost every day.
Oh, I never thought of that.
Pharmaceuticals. We've got clients that stock parts used for surgeries. So these are next day surgeries that things have to be out on time, and the we'll call it the right materials have to be out on time to make the shipping cutoff, because there's a surgery scheduled for the next day. We have clients that are in obviously retail, e-commerce, a number of other spaces as well, but predominantly, and then we've got third-party logistics providers which perform the operations for retailers, healthcare clients, as well as industrial clients as well.
Yeah. I never realized how many warehouses there are in the U.S. Do you have any idea how many are out there?
Around the world, there's over 130,000 that are in the industries that we service, which are
pretty retail, big TAM.
Pretty big TAM. And the way to think about it is, I think it's around 30% North America, 30% EMEA, and about 40% APAC is the way the TAM kind of sits.
That's cool. Dustin, what I'm going to do is take you into what we call our long-ass lightning round. So the first question I ask, you're a successful guy, but give me something that you've screwed up on the job. It could be anywhere in your career.
There's too many to count. So in a prior role, this is earlier in my career, I was presenting to some top leadership at one of my prior companies, and and I was giving a presentation. I had to give a presentation on, I can't remember exactly what the topic was, and I went into the presentation thinking that I was over prepared, I had everything nailed, and I started with kind of telling the story of how I got to the conclusion I got to, and the different topic areas were related to the topic, and the CEO or the head person in the meeting cut me off and said, "I don't care about any of this, just get to the point."
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's a very good learning experience.
It's a valuable lesson.
It's a very valuable lesson. Just what matters most up front, and the stories and everything else can come later. So
put the summary slide up front, everybody.
Exactly.
If you could tell your younger self something knowing what you know today, what would you tell him?
There's 3 things, and actually we had an offsite, like a team offsite last week, and I mentioned these 3 things, and I think they're applicable, they resonate with me because I've learned them throughout my career. One is get context. Like, whatever you think, whatever may be happening, there's probably a broader story around it. So try to get as much context as you can by being able to stand in other people's shoes. And that's whether that be having a conversation about some nuanced topic with engineering, even if you have no idea of how it works technically, just to be able to speak some of the same language and build that relationship. That can be helpful to help get context. It can be working, and really a lot of these come from cross-functional projects. So it's get context, it's lead with your feet. I'm a big believer in just doing what you say you're going to do and not making a big show of it. So how do you just have actions that show that you're doing the best you can for the company and you're focused on the right things. And it doesn't always have to be talking about it. It can just be like people see it. People see the deck that you put together, and you're like, whoa, that's pretty impressive. I didn't even know you were working on that. And I'm like, well, that was, wasn't trying to advertise. It was just like, this is something that we've identified to move the business forward and we want to do. So it's get context, lead with your feet, and focus on what matters most. So this goes back to maybe some of the earlier conversation around put the summary up front. Anytime you're in a job, you've only got limited number of minutes in a day, you've only got limited number of hours in a year. There's opportunity costs. So how do you always, every day you should take a step back and think, what did I work on today? Was it necessary? And is there something that I could be doing to better improve the business? And a lot of, sitting in the finance seat, we have the unique ability to see across functions and really pull together things that are, we'll call it cross-functional ideas or projects to help put actions in place to improve the business. And I think that's an area where I really try to step back and spend time, is just focusing on what matters most. So get context, lead with your feet, and focus on what matters most.
Do you ever catch yourself focusing on things that don't matter the most?
Yeah, honestly, it's when I do, or I feel like I'm spending too much time on things that don't matter the most. A lot of that's a signal like, how do we automate this, or how do I delegate some of this to somebody else? We'll then figure out how to automate, because they might be better at automating that type of thing than me.
CFOs have to negotiate a lot of stuff, and they're also on the other end of negotiating. Do you have any tips for people out there who are trying to be better negotiators?
I'd say it's good to anchor early. That's something you probably learn in Negotiation 101. Anchor early. Also, just write down the list of the different points of leverage you have.
There we go.
And it might be a relationship. It might be a different quote you saw from that same vendor the year before. And I think it's all about taking a little bit of time to be thoughtful about the process, rather than just being emotional and hopping on a call without, we'll call it, doing a little bit of homework. And this doesn't have to be hours and hours and hours, but it can be a couple phone calls and a little bit of digging through email and a few notes and or a little bit of searching online. And usually you can be pretty thoughtful. And what I try to do is I want to also be respectful for the team on the other side. They obviously have to make a living. I know they need to make a margin as well, and they've got commissions and whatever else. So it's I do think that, thinking about quarter ends and the timing of when those deals matter for the other side also can be helpful, because that can be a give you give, is I'll sign by X date even though you don't need it till a week later. Maybe that's really motivating to that sales rep, and maybe they're willing to just be a little bit more thoughtful in terms of the concession they're willing to make as well.
I love how you called that out. I actually have started to do that, because another CFO told me, ask them what they would like you to sign by that would make their life easier.
Yep.
And if you give them like your handshake, like, I'll sign by that date. Can you just help me with this? A lot of times they'll be like, oh, thank you. People don't usually ask that.
Yeah. And I think some of this I learned from at a prior company. I was actually doing MSAs and order forms and contracts. So in working with customers, so I was on the other side. And selling and working with our sales team. And when you do that, you have the you put so much blood, sweat, and tears into all this back and forth, the security assessments, all the different things that are required to get an enterprise agreement in place. At the end of the day, you want it. There's a lot of motivation just to get across the finish line.
There is,
even if it means maybe a slightly larger concession than you may have liked.
Yeah. I do feel though in the current environment, a lot of deals are somewhat shifting towards the 1 or 2 years rather than the 3 or 5 years. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. And then as a wise colleague once told me, time kills all deals. That's the other piece. So it's just being thoughtful about, I know that on the other side, the sales rep is thinking that same way. So how do we just, also just make sure we're being responsive and not like non-communicative throughout the process.
The worst thing is you just go silent.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes it's a strategy that may work for a few days.
Strategy, yeah.
But it's not something, I don't think it's something you want to like consistently do, because you do want to, I think relationships are helpful in almost any environment, even if it's a vendor-customer environment.
Right. Next one, can you walk me through your finance software stack? What tools do you use today to get the job done?
Yeah, so we've got a number of different tools we use. We use Netsuite. I think sponsored the show.
Sponsor the pod.
Good shout out. We've used Netsuite. We use Tipalti for payables. We use Airbase.
We had their CFO Anil on just a couple weeks ago.
Oh, very good. Yeah. And we got a number of other tools as well. The most recent tool we purchased was it was called SaaS Optics when we purchased it, but now I think it's called Maxio.
Maxio, sponsor the pod.
Oh, I didn't even realize
we love Maxio here.
There you go. But one of the things we found with Netsuite is similar to what I was mentioning earlier. Is that there's subscription businesses and manufacturing businesses, and so kind of blending those two together, it's a little bit of a challenge, and not every system can do that super efficiently. But we've got bolt-ons like Maxio that allows us to ensure that we've got all the modern SaaS billing and RevRec and that sort of capabilities on the NetSuite platform, which NetSuite's great for. We'll call it inventory management and all the supply chain and production order. All the nuanced tracking you need when you have a supply chain.
Maxio can handle some gnarly subscription predicaments you're in.
Yeah, so it's been a good combination.
All right, what's the craziest thing someone's ever tried to expense?
The craziest thing, this is from a prior company that I haven't dealt a whole lot in this area in terms of outside of the last two companies, but this is a prior company. Somebody went to a sporting event and bought a lot of apparel.
Apparel?
Yes, like.
But was it picked by a robot?
I don't think so. This was before robots. This was like 10, 12, 15 years ago, and that was probably a little bit beyond the line. It wasn't just one thing. It was like thousands of dollars worth of stuff, and all from one baseball game, which I guess that's possible to spend that much money in one baseball game.
Yeah, it's a lot of jerseys.
Yes, exactly.
Dustin, thanks for coming on, sharing your insights, and I loved hearing about your business, and congrats on all the success so far.
All right, well, thank you for having me, CJ.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.